Hello, beautiful people. You would think that the set of everything your character knows would be an essential element to every role-playing game ever, no matter whether you're sitting behind a computer or gathered around the table. But if you study this element of gameplay in detail, you'll find that many games don't treat knowledge in any particular way. It's just a given in the course of playing a role, so nothing special needs to be done in order to accommodate it. Black Desert does things differently. It's a role-playing game that treats what your character knows as data. It's a metric that can be quantified, indexed, and searched through. This is a stat called knowledge with a capital K, and honestly, it's one of my all-time favorite mechanics of any video game. I thought it was rather unique when I first started playing, and I still believe it's fresh and awesome even today. Let me geek out to you all about it. For those who don't know, Black Desert, or Black Desert Online if you're old school cool, is a massively multiplayer online role-playing game. You create your own character and you can explore a whole fantasy world with other people. There's a main story that you can follow if you like, but the game doesn't really stop you from pursuing any goals you establish yourself. That's the main reason why I haven't accomplished as much in the game as others have, despite committing over 400 hours of my time into it. Take note of that, it'll play an important role in our discussion later. You'll find all the traditional RPG fare here. Your character has vital stats, including health points, attack and defense points, the load they can bear, and so on. Typical stuff. But your character also has measurable capital K knowledge. But knowledge isn't just another metric. It's a considered and intentionally designed feature that actually synergizes quite well with the game's other elements. It's time for everyone's favorite nerdy excursion, a deep dive into a specific aspect of a specific video game. Gear up, adventurers. In summary, an adventurer in Black Desert possesses not just the weapons and armor they currently wield, and not just what's in their inventory, but also what they know. The game quantifies what you know. This might sound reductive or even the prime feature of a dystopian nightmare, but actually the end result is that it allows for unique interactions between players and non-player entities. What Black Desert does differently. Taking a step back, role-playing games in general are notorious for the sheer number of variables which need to be kept track of. It's a defining characteristic of the genre that differentiates them from ordinary board games. A good way to get a sense of the complexity of an RPG is by examining the character sheet. Basically, the character sheet is supposed to show everything a character is responsible for. Needless to say, the character sheet doesn't describe literally everything. That'd be ridiculous. Certainly, the character knows more about themselves and the world they inhabit than what's written down on the sheet. This is fine in a tabletop setting, because the facts of the world are discovered through the conversation between the game master and the players. It's a collaborative effort. The whole point of playing a tabletop RPG is to learn everything that cannot be written down on the character sheet. Of course, direct person-to-person interaction is not discouraged in multiplayer video games. Black Desert is no exception, but Black Desert's main innovation is that it takes advantage of the computer's ability to keep track of all that extra stuff for you. It makes perfect sense if you think about it. When there's a ton of data to keep track of, throw a computer at it. It can handle all of it better than you can. The end result is that the absolute volume of information which Black Desert presents can be easily dealt with. It'd be impossible to keep track of all of this in a tabletop setting, but Black Desert takes full advantage of its own status as a computer program to keep track of an entire library's worth of data. Pretty slick. Side note, I don't want to mislead anyone, so let me clarify something. I should mention that knowledge is actually a family metric and not a character stat. The family is what the game calls all characters that belong to a single account, collectively. Basically, a single human player is identified by their family name, who in turn manages several playable characters. Some stats, such as combat level, are logged for each character, but other stats apply equally to all characters. Because knowledge is a family-wide stat, it aggregates for the player, the one whose butt is in the chair behind the computer. In my opinion, having knowledge be per character would make for deeper and potentially more interesting role-playing, but I will admit the developers made a very smart compromise here. When knowledge piles up per player, they need to learn the details about the world only once. This keeps the discovery process fresh, because the player never needs to waste time uncovering lore that they've already uncovered. This is critical, because knowledge serves as a kind of measurement of game progress, which I'll explain in more detail later. The end result is that creating a new character does not mean the player has to lose any valuable information. Creating a new character is not a step backward, which reverts the game to a prior state. On the contrary, it's a step forward, which facilitates new discoveries for the player. I've got about 450 hours of playtime to my name, and I swear that none of it is taken up by AFK fishing or horse training, but I continue to learn something new every single time I log in. My in-game family accumulates knowledge with a capital K, but I, too, the blood and bone dress-up geek out, I learn something new, too. I will admit this phenomenon is at least partially explained by my notoriously slow pace of playing, but the world really is that huge and detailed. No wonder I'm hooked. And that's primarily thanks to the wise decision to make knowledge a family stat, not a character stat. Lots of games keep track of the player's progress. Pretty standard. Nothing to write home about. In simpler games, this is a little more than a record of where the player has been, possibly an indication of where they need to go next. But Black Desert's knowledge works differently. The knowledge the player accrues can be used to measure progress of a sort, but it's not just a measure of progress. Well, what is progress anyway? In isolation, it's a measure of where you are along a predefined path. You've started at point A, you need to get to point B, you find yourself at a certain spot between the two. It takes 10 stepping stones to get there, you've touched the first 5 stones already. Mathematically, you're halfway done. Here, your journey is measured linearly. But Black Desert's knowledge isn't a flat, ordered checklist. It's an encyclopedia. And you don't read the encyclopedia from start to finish, unless you're an erudite lunatic. Hey, that'd make an excellent band name. In Black Desert, the knowledge you've acquired doesn't indicate how many stones you've stepped on. Instead, it shows how far along you are with, like, a painting. You start with a blank canvas and end up with a beautiful masterpiece. But when is the painting done? It's done whenever you want. Maybe it's never truly done. You can always add more detail. Every morsel of knowledge in Black Desert is a brushstroke, not a tick in a box. There's no one right way to do it, there's no wrong way to do it. That's how the process of discovery should be. The journey to build a compendium of knowledge can take any path, but also the way to gain a single item of knowledge can be varied. Taking a step back, in general, there are many different ways to gain knowledge in Black Desert. The primary methods are talking to NPCs, reading books, visiting places, just like in real life, I suppose. But sometimes merely talking to an NPC is not sufficient. For instance, some NPCs won't share information with you unless you know them particularly well. The game calls this metric amity with the family, and many NPCs simply won't talk to you at all unless you can prove that you know things which they find important. In other words, some knowledge is gate-kept by other knowledge. This is related to what I said earlier about knowledge not being a flat checklist. Knowledge is actually a tiered hierarchy of information hidden behind other information. Knowledge is like onions. There's layers. It's because there's layers. I mentioned earlier that there frequently are multiple ways to obtain the same knowledge, so let's get into that. Most of the time, the knowledge that you're looking for can be obtained in an appropriate or an obvious way. For example, to gain knowledge about a geographic location, you could read about it in a book, or you could actually physically go there. But you can't just peek your head in and say hi. Generally, you need to be well within the geographic region in order to learn about it. The point is, the game is detailed enough to allow for multiple paths to arrive at the same information, which is a fair mirror of real life, I would say. Time to pivot. I need to talk about the whole amnesia thing. Let's face it, the main storyline being driven by amnesia is such a cliché. The interaction with the evil witch Elezra at the beginning is neat, and the game teases the player with all of the sick-ass moves they will learn later, which is entertaining. But then Elezra stabs the player in the back, and they black out. Oh no! The player wakes up and... I'm supposed to say Balanos. It's clearly Balanos. I'm supposed to say Balanos. The player wakes up there, amongst the ruins. And, well, surprise, the player doesn't remember anything about what just happened.
What would compel you to ask such an obvious thing?
Giving the protagonist amnesia is, frankly, pretty lazy story writing. It's a cheap way to generate intrigue and motivate the plot. But it's not all bad, because it makes the knowledge you gain that much more meaningful. Black Desert's knowledge mechanic, therefore, is reinforced by the main story. Now, that doesn't necessarily redeem the convoluted plot, but going into detail about the story itself is outside the scope of this video. Maybe I should attempt to make a video about that. I'm just saying that a fully fledged knowledge mechanic actually makes a lot of sense in a story where the main character suffers from amnesia, wouldn't you say? It might even be a clever idea. Knowledge as currency. Becoming a hyper-intelligent, big-brained, omniscient know-it-all can be a fun goal in and of itself, but Black Desert does not leverage knowledge just for its own sake. There is more to knowledge than simply knowing things. There is a sense in which knowledge can be utilized as a sort of currency. Time to wax philosophical? Something I greatly appreciate about knowledge in Black Desert is that it's not just facts. Simple truths like, this is a place that exists, or this is the name of the local blacksmith. Those definitely matter, but knowledge also encompasses things that may or may not even be true. For example, we catch glimpses of in-world mythology, and sometimes just plain old hearsay. It's just like real life. In some situations, it's more useful simply to know what people think about something, rather than knowing what the thing is, per se. Like, just knowing that it is said that yada yada is true can be sufficient. Depends on the situation, of course. My point is that I appreciate that the knowledge itself in the game isn't merely several variations of the same theme. It's clear to me that the richness of information was definitely not generated by a Mad Lib-style fill-in-the-blank template. I'm not sure if other adventurers do this, but here's a fun challenge I sometimes like to give myself when I play. A very frequent sort of NPC interaction plays out like this. You talk to an NPC, who sends you to another NPC, which starts a quest. The character you now need to visit is usually referred to only by their name. The question is, how do you find them? The game offers multiple ways to figure it out. The first is to just click on the thing and it shows you where to go. Every task within every quest is associated with a specific geographic location, which you must visit. You can just ask the game to put a marker on the world's map, and you can even ask the game to move your character to that spot automatically. This is easy mode, but sometimes I like to play a different way. If I recognize the name and I know where they're located, then I'll just go there myself. In practice, though, the name is usually something vaguely familiar, and I don't fully recall it, but my character would. So I bring up the knowledge menu and type in the name. If it's someone that I have met before, then their face shows up with a little blurb about them. The information provided here is not the answer to where to find them, but instead it provides some clues which inform me how to find them. If I limit myself to these constraints, I've just injected a small dose of difficulty into my gameplay, which makes for more engaging role-playing and more sophisticated play in general. I don't need to memorize every single detail about every single character in the world, there's literally thousands, but I can rely upon what my character knows in case I don't recall. Sometimes this doesn't work because the same NPC appears in multiple places. It's just a weird side effect of working within the limitations of the game engine. I bet this quirk could take some players out of the immersion, but at the same time, I don't think too many people engage in this mini knowledge-based challenge thing that I just described. My point is, I appreciate the knowledge mechanic for having the flexibility to accommodate this style of play, which I believe the developers did not originally intend. Knowledge with a capital K doesn't have arbitrary limitations or strings attached, which would prevent me from doing what I do. Perhaps it's a complete accident, but I don't care. I'm having a great time. Conclusion. Knowledge with a capital K is a fascinating and, in my experience, a fairly unique resource available to players. It's a remix of the otherwise ordinary game mechanic of keeping track of a player's progress, but this time it's got lots of fun and useful side effects. The idea of a tabletop version of Black Desert is fun to think about, but I don't think it would be very effective, because an essential aspect of Black Desert would need to be sacrificed. In my opinion, knowledge is just that critical to the game's identity and its success. This all goes to show that the knowledge mechanic is a fully developed element of the game. It's not an afterthought. If the vast geography of Black Desert's world gives the game breadth, then knowledge completes the picture and imbues it with profound depth. Knowledge isn't the only reason why I keep playing Black Desert, but I more than appreciate the vastness of what I can accumulate. I encourage the developers to keep it up. I can be a lifelong learner within Black Desert, just as much as in real life.